Good day and welcome to On Call. I am sitting in today for Ms. Sharon Devines Daniels, and I am going to be speaking with the lovely Dr. Maxwell, as he is our resident doctor on call. So, Dr. Maxwell, let me say thank you for having me sitting for Sharon today.
You're welcome.
All right. Yeah. Today is a topic that I know Dr. Max has dealt with, but we're going to do a little bit more in-depth work, some things that would have not been covered in the last program. That's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about colorectal cancer, or colon cancer as it's called. Dr. Max, welcome again to On Call.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I know your time as usual is limited. You're a doctor on call, a busy man. So, and you have lots of notes today. So I want to make sure I do you justice and we get through as much of this as possible.
Sure.
Right, but just as a matter of recap, because I know we're really going to be focusing on the treatment options that are available in Tobago, in Trinidad and Tobago today. Right. But just maybe some people who would not have caught the program the last time, let's just go through a quick recap. What is colorectal or colon cancer?
All right, colon cancer, really, or colorectal cancer, they are cancers that affect the lower part of the, large intestine, the colon and the rectum. Okay, so any cancer that is, found around that area is called colorectal cancer, right? It used to be a cancer that, we look out for in your 50s and your 60s, okay? However, researches that are coming out now are indicating that the younger age group, specifically the 20 to 49 age groups, are having a higher incidences of colon cancer. Right. And even right here in Tobago, have seen cases of 23, 24, 32-year-olds that are dying of these cancers. And therefore, it's always important to highlight it so that people can know their risks and then seek to get screened, because it's a cancer that is largely treatable once you catch it on time. And you can either screen to prevent or screen to detect, okay? And there are tests that are available locally, okay, that can be used to achieve any of these goals.
I know this is a bit worrisome for me. I remember, growing up, you would think that, okay, when I'm at 50, when I'm at 60, that's when I really need to start checking for these things. So, before then I can relax, I don't have to worry. But now you're telling me that even people in their 20s.
Yes.
So there is no age anymore when you should say, because, going through some of the notations and so that the research that's out there, it's usually said that when you're 50, when you reach 50, that's the time when you now start making your yearly checkups with the doctors. That is out the window now.
Because there was a research that came out recently that indicated specifically the 20 to 49 age group are having increasing figures. Okay, they are still not the major group. The major group will be the 50 and above age group, but compare with the rest of the age categories, we realize that what should be the figure that we expect in that lower age group is gradually, climbing up.
But tell me, what's responsible for this? Is it diet? Is it lack of exercise? I mean, I know they say there's specific diet that, apart from it being hereditary, maybe a diet increasing red foods cooked at high temperature, meat and so on. All of these things can contribute to it, as well as, not exercising regularly or your lack of exercise. Is there anything else, or exactly how? Because it's younger now, so even the young people now need to start taking note of what is it that they are doing that put them at risk for developing colon cancer.
Well, then that will take me to the risk factors of colon cancer, and there are quite a number of them. Okay, if I go through them one by one, the first on the list that I have here is your diet. Okay, diet plays a very important role in most of the chronic diseases and cancers that we have. But when you talking of colorectal cancer, diets that are rich in red meat. Okay, if you eat a lot of red meat, that increases your risk. The other thing is that if you cook your meat at very high temperatures, such as frying and grilling, that puts you at risk. Okay?
Doc,
if you eat a lot of processed processed meat, like things that you find in sausages and all those processed meats that that we buy in cans and stuff like that, they have been incriminated in incidences of colon cancer.
Well, hold up. You said grill, and I really want you to expand on just for 2 seconds. Why? Because it has been bandied about, in terms of nutritional and what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat when it comes to meats.
Right.
So frying, we know it is potentially bad because of all the saturated fats and everything that is associated with that. But it's usually said that baking and grilling are the healthier forms of consumption of meat.
Right.
So, but you're saying now that grilling also can be...
Grilling at high temperatures produces chemicals that could become carcinogenic.
So we're talking about like the average barbecue grilling now?
All those barbecue grilling and high temperature fryings and all those things, they're not necessarily healthy.
So don't eat them at all, or eat them with moderation. What's it you're saying?
Everything will be moderation.
In moderation.
Okay.
So it's bad if you overdo.
If you're overdoing anything that you overdo.
But if you take like maybe once a month, you take a little grill.
Well, that will be at your discretion, Okay.
All right. So some of the other risk factors.
Okay. The other thing is physical inactivity. Okay. So lack of physical activity will increase your chance of colorectal cancer, like many other cancers, because exercise, has been known to reduce the development of cancers. The mechanism is pretty complex and not very widely understood, but exercise does improve your health all around. The next thing is obesity. Okay. Overweight and obesity will increase your risk of dying from colorectal cancer, unlike many other type of cancers, because we know that obesity and fat deposits, produces certain kind of hormones that aid, carcinogen to proliferate. Okay. You also have smoking. Okay. We know smoking increases practically like all types of cancers. Okay. So when you have a chronic smoker, you significantly increase your risk of cancers. Heavy alcohol use. Okay, people who drink a lot. Okay, that is also one of the major factors.
So apart from cirrhosis of the liver, you can also get colon
cancer. Okay, and you also have factors like your age, like we've been talking about. The older you are, after 50, the greater your chances of developing cancer. But we now understand, like I said before, we have younger age group now coming down with cancers of the colon. You also have personal history of colorectal polyps. Polyps are growths that develop inside of the colon or the rectum. When you pick up this colon on time, so that is one of the preventive screening. So when you do a screening that shows that you have a polyp, you can easily deal with the polyp, because we found out that polyp normally, eventually, some of them will transform into cancers if they're not treated. So when you do a screening test that shows that you have polyp, one of the best way to do is to go and deal with that quickly. So when you have polyps, it's a risk factor. Okay, and also personal history of inflammatory bowel diseases like Crohn's disease, people with inflammatory bowel disorders, ulcerative colitis, all those things. The inflammation in the bowel that persists for a very long period of time eventually will cause cells to change into abnormal cells, which may transform into cancer cells in the future. Then you have family history of polyps or cancers. If you have any close relatives that have polyps or cancer,
and it doesn't have to be colon cancer, it could be any form
type of cancer, you could be at risk, because some of these cancers are genetically, transmitted. Okay, so when you have close families, maybe parents or siblings or children that have cancer, then you are also at risk. Surprisingly, there's another type of risk that most of us are not very, very, aware of, and that is when you have type 2 diabetes.
Well, I was going to ask, because when you first said that, younger people are being diagnosed with colorectal cancer and so on. You spoke of obesity a bit earlier. So my mind was thinking, I know we've been classed as a population with a high rate of obese people, as well as the high incidence of diabetes. Right. So I'm figuring maybe you put the two together in the younger folks, and so now you end up with people who are susceptible to colon cancer.
So researchers have shown that type 2 diabetes increases your chances of various types of cancers, with the exception of prostate cancer, because we actually found out that prostate cancer rate actually reduces in people in the category people who have diabetes, but diabetes increases the risk of practically all other type of cancers. So
that's ironic.
Yeah, very ironic. You know, so you have type 2 diabetes, and the significant thing is also that the diabetes itself and colorectal cancer also share common risk factors like obesity.
Okay, so in terms of your diet, your lack of exercise.
So they're all intertwined together. Okay.
So the better thing to do is eat properly, exercise regularly, and then get your regular checkups.
Good. And another risk factor is that people who work night shift works. Okay, there's a research that I read recently that said that, you know, working a night shift at least 3 nights a month.
3 nights a month?
Yeah, for about 15 years significantly increases your risk of colon cancers.
For Trinidad and Tobago, what category of people are we talking about? Because I mean,
we could talk about different categories of people, especially the essential services people. You're talking of nurses,
we talk about security guards,
people, police, you know, people who work shifts. Shift work. There's another study I read that was conducted in Florida in 2002. That study actually equate night shifts, okay, with smoking a pack of cigarettes every day. So the risk that you run, okay, when you smoke 20 or whatever the pack of cigarettes is equivalent to working night shift.
So 3 days a month for 15 years. And we know this is a bit unrealistic, because if people work in the night shift, you're working the night shift more than 3 days per month.
So it's particularly more risky for people who want to stay permanent nights. So you do all your permanent night works and then you retire. And before you know it, you are diagnosed with cancer.
So that will also affect like taxi drivers and people who work night shift, receptionists.
So, it's not always a good thing to do.
Okay. So, but if for instance, that is something that can't be avoided, or what would be the recommendation? If this is your job, this is what you have to do.
Right. Now, that is just one risk factor. That does not mean if you do that you will definitely,
but it puts you at risk.
It's just a risk factor. So there will be other circumstantial factors that will come into play.
But if you have to work the night shift, and then you also, because you are conscious that this is a factor, you manage what you eat, you exercise,
so you
it
reduce
brings
the other
down
risk factors. Okay,
all right.
You understand?
Excellent.
So that doesn't mean. So it doesn't mean okay. People now say okay, because I'm working night duty, I'm going to get cancer. Everybody get
and stop
working and whatever. I say doctors say
everything shut down.
That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is just. Night shift is just one of the many risk factors.
Like obesity and diabetes.
Okay. And night shift is also a risk factor for diabetes. Okay. Because when you work night shift, you destabilize your metabolic process. Okay. And a lot of other things come.
And when you should be resting and your body recuperating, you find you're hungry and you're snacking.
You start to eat, and most people work night will eat more at night when they are up in the night, and therefore their risk of developing obesity is higher. All right, so I want people to get that very clear so that they don't call the employer tomorrow and say, I ain't working no more night shift. I will no more night duty. But it does increases people's risk.
All right. You mentioned about the polyps, and we spoke about screening. So when you screen and you recognize that there are polyps there, that they can be treated. So if someone does yearly screening and every time they screen they recognize a polyp, so does that mean that at the point of screening that the polyps are dealt with one time, whatever is found, or do they have to go back in?
No, polyp is not an emergency. So if you discover polyps, then you are referred to see the surgeon, okay, and the surgeon will possibly just, you know, deal with it surgically and, you know, remove the polyps, and that significantly, you know, will deal with the problem, you know, right?
All right, I think we need to just take 2 seconds to go to a break. I know this is a bit unusual in the program, but we're going to be right back to continue our discussion with Dr. Max. Stay tuned for On Call and more on colorectal cancer.
Special occasions are worth preserving at the best possible quality. And that's where Tobago Video Limited comes in. Here's what we can do for you. We can videotape your wedding in HD quality, capture still photos, print your photos in a magazine style, create a personalized website featuring your wedding photos and clips of your video. And best of all, we will deliver all of this within 72 hours. Contact us at 868-635-1759 or email tobagovideoltd@gmail.com or visit our website at tobagovideo.com. Tobago Video Limited, capturing moments.
And we're back with On Call with Dr. Maxwell, and we're discussing colon cancer or colon rectal cancer. We've just spoke about some of the risk factors that are associated with developing colon cancer. And so I want to specifically, I want to make sure we capture this because I know this was the objective of the program, the screening and the screening options that are available, right? So I know that there are CT scans. What are some of the others? I don't remember them off the top of my head, Dr. Max. What are some of them that are available? X-rays as well, I think.
Yeah, there are a lot of screening options that are available when you talk about, you know, cancers or colorectal cancer or whatever. But there's very simple, straightforward testing that is non-invasive and non-expensive or inexpensive for colorectal cancer. One of those tests is what we call the stool test. And the stool test, what we used to do before is to do the fecal occult blood testing, where you pass stool and we just look for microscopic, you know, evidence of bleeding, because once there's bleeding in the lower intestine, is an indication of something going wrong there. So they do a fecal occult blood test. However, the American College of Surgeons and the Society of Surgeons and most cancer societies across all around the world now are emphasizing the other type of stool test, which is the fecal immunochemical testing, which is more accurate or more specific, you know, in detecting colon cancer. So the fecal occult blood test is, some people still do it, but it's no longer the favorite. The favorite now is the FIT, which is the fecal immunochemical testing. It's still using your stool test. You pass the stool and you send it to the lab and do a quick test that doesn't last more than a few minutes, and then you are able to, you can actually do it at home. Okay, so
you can do what at home? Do the testing
that
at
testing
home?
can also even be done at
Really?
home. Yeah. So those are the things that we want to emphasize and want people to know that it's available, and it's available right here in Tobago. All right, so that people can get screened. So once you have any of the above risk categories, okay, if you are 45 and 50, you know, we ask you to start screening. If you have risk factors in your family that are strong, maybe you have polyps or cancer before or whatever, then you might start a little younger, like around 40 years old. Okay?
35.
So, you know, well, people could do that, but some of the tests are done like every year or every 2 years. But the other type of test that a little kind of, you know, not expensive still, but a little more expensive than the stool test is the colonoscopy testing, okay, where, you know, a fiber tube.
That's a camera.
Yeah, that is put inside the rectum, and the doctor will look inside there. That takes about like 20 to 30 minutes to get done, and then they will see all the different parts of the intestine, how healthy they are, if there are polyps and whatever is going on there. Sometimes the pictures are also taken and you can actually see the picture yourself. Okay, so those are also available in Tobago. So those two major tests are available and they can be utilized for screening. But you do have other type of testings. Okay, you have tests like sigmoidoscopy, proctoscopy, other imaging like ultrasound and CT and MRI and
so X-ray and CT, they're not available in Trinidad and Tobago?
No, they are available, but those are a little more expensive. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. So the hospital doesn't do this. You would have to do it at a lab.
No, the hospital does that. Most hospitals in Trinidad and Tobago are equipped.
But if you're doing your regular checkup would not be done at the hospital. It would be done maybe at your resident doctor outpatient facility.
No, it depends on what health facility that you choose to really go to. People might go private, people might go to the health centers, and then from there they refer based on whatever finding to the hospital, and there are options in Trinidad and Tobago that you can utilize.
Okay, but I'm a little intrigued, a little piqued. You said the one that you can do at home by yourself. Is that really safe?
No, it's like, say, go and do a pregnancy test. You
so
take a urine, and there's a kit that you use.
Oh, so there's a kit that you can buy. Because I'm thinking you're looking at the school for microscope. So you need a microscope at home. I mean, I know it sounds a bit far-fetched, but just for the sake of clarification. So there's a kit that is available over the counter?
Use not over the counter. I mean, you can source it through labs and whatever. Just like you can get, pregnancy tests.
But would you recommend somebody do that at home by themselves?
Not really, okay, but
it's a possibility. It's an option.
It's an option. Yeah.
Okay, it's an option. Yeah. All right. Tell me, what is the survival rate for colon cancer, for colorectal?
Well, it depends. Survival rate of most cancers will depend on when it is caught, at what stage they are, because there's a staging mechanism. I don't know if it's stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Okay. So depending on what stages that you find them, that will determine the survival rate. Now, if you catch a polyp, polyp is not they are precancerous, they're not cancer. But once you take them out, you really improve your chance because you reduce your risk significantly. But if you get a cancer that is now forming, which is called carcinoma in situ, is right there, and you catch it early, okay, then you can easily surgically remove that. If you say maybe stage 1 or stage 2, those are still manageable with surgery, radiotherapy, and chemotherapy. But when you start reaching stage 4 and stage, the advanced cancers, then the chances are pretty limited, because by that time, colon cancer is very peculiar. It will spread to the surrounding organs, and one of the surrounding organs that will be your bladder, will be the spine, will be
everything that's around that lower
pelvic area. Once that happens, or you spread into the spine, then it's really bad. Okay.
Now, we spoke a lot about what you should not eat, but is there a special diet or anything that you should eat, or a particular set of exercise that you should do, or is it just manage what you eat and exercise? Because I mean, I could get up every morning and walk around my house and say I've been exercising.
Yeah. Right. We advise that you reduce your red meat intake, because red meat is incriminated in that. Okay. Also, possibly limit the kind of high temperature cooking that you do, because that will minimize your exposure to some of these chemicals that may possibly cause that. And also stay active. Okay. We say the processed meat and the processed food as well, you limit them. Okay, so that you reduce your risk. And the most important thing, the best way to beat colon cancer is really to screen and detect. So when you detect, then you are able to deal with it in the very early stages. Okay, these testings can be done yearly or every 2 years,
depending on your age.
Depending on your age, whatever, and you pick them up. If you pick up a cancer within the year, then you can easily deal with them.
That's excellent. But Dr. Max, I say I came in with a lot of paper with a lot of notes. Have we exhausted your notes, or you have anything else you want to add on what we've on colon?
There will always be so many things you can add on, but we've got limited time, so that's why we've got to squeeze in whatever you can within the limited time possible. All right. But what I always want to say is that prevention is always better than cure.
An ounce of prevention is always better than a pound of cure.
Prevention is better than a pound of cure.
Always good advice
So
from the doctor.
if you are within that age group that we're saying, okay, anything above 45, you need to get screened. If you've got a lot of risk factors, then you might need to start a little earlier. But the tests are locally available. They are non-invasive. They are inexpensive. You can just walk up to any doctor's office and get them done.
And if you have a family, if it's hereditary, then maybe you should get screened a bit earlier.
Yeah, so if you have families who have colon cancer, mother have colon cancer,
just check yourself
cancer,
as early as possible.
Any kind of cancer in your family, there is always good to be check-ins for some of these things.
Just to see. Well, Dr. Marks, I think that's it. I thank you so very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Now we are waiting for Sharon to come back so she can take over again.
No,
but
it's nice having you, so I think you could stay on a little bit.
Oh, that's so nice.
A little 10-day or CPEP or whatever, you know. It's good.
Thank you so very much for your time.
No problem.
All right, Dr. Marks. That's it for this program of On Call. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place. Have a good day.